Oh, magic makers. I am really excited today. I have, well, not only is she an amazing person, but she is a good friend. And I like when I find friends who we are very like-minded in our thinking and our approach, but also has a separate area of expertise that I can bring on and showcase to you so that you can better understand what you should be doing, especially when it comes to testing. I feel nowadays like I can go on any social media platform and there's someone talking about this test for this and this test for that. And so I was like, you know what? Let me bring someone who knows this stuff and can help you troubleshoot. Should you be getting all this test? Should you be spending all your money? What's worth it? What's not worth it? And so I want to welcome to the show Miss Ashley Fillmore.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. And likewise, you're such an awesome lady. And I know we have so many things in common. So I'm very excited to be here today, talk with your audience, and hopefully drop some really good nuggets of information for them when it comes to testing, knowing what symptoms to look for, to determine if they need a test, and how to go about navigating that.
Perfect. So I think let's start like if we I want to treat this like a pyramid. So let's just start at like the base of the pyramid. So most of us, this is a subtle hint, magic makers, most of us go to the doctor at least once a year and they give us our baseline test, just to make sure that we're alive. For many women, can they just get away with those baseline tests?
I would say women that fall in the category of feeling really good. And sure, we're human. All of us are going to have nights that we don't sleep well, or we're stressed out because we have a lot going on with our jobs or in our personal lives. But generally, if you can reflect over your days, weeks, and months and say, I feel really good. My energy's great. I'm able to do what I need to do throughout the day. My clothes fit comfortably. I'm at my healthy weight, which is going to be different for every single one of us. Overall, everything else feels pretty good. My appetite's great. I'm able to nourish my body and fuel my activities with healthy whole foods. If you can check all of those boxes, I would say, sure, going in for your annual testings, or routine exams is all you would need. And that would be, just getting your blood work done. If you're a woman over the age of 40, your mammogram, your OB appointment, those types of things are what I'm referring to. I think that if you check those boxes, just doing that would be acceptable.
Yeah, I like that. So it's like, here at the base of the pyramid, and I feel good, right? I'm pretty. I feel, for the most part, pretty healthy. Now, you mentioned kind of some other kind of symptoms that people might be experiencing. So if I'm experiencing a handful of those symptoms, what's the next level of tests that I may ask my doctor to run?
Right. So let's say you aren't feeling well. And so, that's a very broad term. And I think
I
for all
know.
of us, it's going to look a little different, right? Like what's really feeling well. For example, my version of feeling good could be someone else's version of not feeling so
Right,
great. Hopefully
exactly.
that's not the case, but it's very relative to the individual. I would say, if you are a woman and regardless of your age, I obviously help a lot of women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, but I would say, sure, even if you're younger than 30, and if you are gaining weight, you don't feel healthy, you are not sleeping well, if you're still menstruating, you're not having a regular cycle anymore, or they're absolutely miserable. Maybe your cycle's coming on a regular basis, but it's miserable. You feel horrible before and
Mm.
during. If your energy's off, if you can barely eat anything and you feel like you gain weight when you look at a food, then sure, if you can check off a lot of those boxes, I definitely think that that is a sign that you need to do a deeper investigation on what's going on. And a part of that investigation could potentially be testing. But I will say that instead of jumping right to hormonal testing and double checking your hormone levels or seeing if there's something going on, you can also start with a lot more basic things, just as looking at your diet, your lifestyle, working with a professional that is an expert in this category that can really help you navigate what you should and shouldn't be doing to ensure that you are doing everything right. And then definitely getting test ran can be an option, but you just want to make sure that you really are in a position to need the test and it's going to be of value to you.
I love everything you just said because I feel that, nowadays that before I used to have to go to a doctor in order for them to run particular tests. Now I feel like, you can do a lot of things on your own. But you just hit the nail on the head. It's that I have to look, I can't a test can't help me outrun my lifestyle. So if I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating well, I'm not exercising, of course I might feel like crap.
Right. Yes, exactly. And so you could even go take a test. And to be honest with you, if your nutrition, your sleep, your stress management, your exercise isn't dialed in, then you're still going to struggle. And so you're just going to be more frustrated because now you've invested money. Most of the time, these tests, now some of them, which we can talk about here in a second, may be covered by your insurance, but some are not. So
Mm.
you're going to end up spending money out of pocket potentially and end up no farther ahead, which is very frustrating. So I think initially doing a full evaluation and having everything assessed, and then at that point, you can determine if you need testing, and if so, what type of testing should you get done. And that should really be contingent on your symptoms, what you're feeling, and what you are experiencing, because not all testing is the same.
Right, right. And I love that because usually when a client comes to me and says, "Oh, Kim, should I have my hormones tested or my thyroid tested?" My first step is, give me 6 months of you being consistent with your sleep, your exercise, and your food. And then we could talk about, do you still want those tests? Because maybe you feel better.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And typically, when you go to the doctors, especially as a woman in the United States, and you get your blood panel taken, they're going to check your TSH. So, generally, when you get your normal blood work done, that is going to be a part of your exam. Now, maybe some doctors don't test it, but most doctors are going to look at that just as a part of your routine checkup. Sure, you can do a deeper evaluation if that TSH comes back out of the, normal range, or if you still are experiencing symptoms, even if it is within a normal range. So typically you're going to have that test done, but you're right. A big part of getting your health under control is starting with your lifestyle and your nutrition, and then taking it to the next level. If those things aren't helping you, or if you're not seeing improvements, then you can definitely say, okay, this is a great time for me to get, a Dutch test, or should I
Mm.
go to my doctor and have them check, different hormone levels, or have different things looked into because my body's not responding. I agree with you. I think starting off with the basics first, building that foundation, and then maybe midway through the 6 months, or even at the end, like you said, saying, okay, here is where we are. How are you feeling? Are you feeling better? This is your results so far, the progress you've made, and then be able to determine, is that something that, you need? The one thing I want to say though, before we go any farther, is that if deep inside internally, you truly feel like something is wrong,
Mm.
and you feel like something is just not right, you don't feel like yourself, your energy is not just, hey, I'm really tired and need an extra cup or two of coffee, but just way off. I will never tell a client to hold off on getting medical care. I mean, sure, there is a base level of, hey, I'm gaining weight, or I can't lose weight. I don't feel so great in my clothes. My energy's kind of off, and I just wish I felt better. Now, that is different than, I am really concerned. Something is just not right. So when it comes to that second choice, I'm just really concerned, something is just not right, or in deep inside, like something feels off, never push that aside. You have to always be your own health advocate. And at times that means going to the doctors, even if everything looks okay externally, and saying, okay, something isn't right. I need you guys to take a deeper look. So I just want to throw that in there because I do get afraid at times there could be clients experiencing different symptoms and say, oh, this is probably nothing, right? Maybe I just need to work on my nutrition for a while and my workout program, when, maybe their symptoms, not knowing, obviously, we're not talking to everyone listening in personally right now and saying, oh, it's not a big deal, but then it could be something. So one of the things I always tell my clients is this: what you're telling me right now, the symptoms you're sharing with me, very much seems like, based off of the nutrition, your exercise, your lifestyle, I see what you're eating, I see how you're moving. Honestly, a lot of these actions are leading to you feeling this way, and this is very normal. I truly do believe that, starting off with the basics, cleaning up your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, all of the things you just said to Kim, is a great starting spot. But if I have someone that's really having some concerning symptoms, that are really complaining of just a new level of low energy and not feeling well, I will always say, go see your medical doctor, because I'm not a medical doctor. And so that is kind of where I also draw my line, is that deep down, if you do feel like something just isn't right, it's not going to hurt you, right? In my mind, you go to the doctors, everything checks out, and you wasted an appointment, but at least you get peace of mind knowing that all is well. So actually, it's really not a waste, because you at least get to not have to worry about your health anymore.
Yeah, no, I am in 100% agreement. If it is, we all kind of know our bodies, right? And how I started down my journey is that I knew my body, that I knew like something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And so that's what what both Ashley and I are trying to say. It's like, yeah, you know your body better than I do. But if you're someone who's like, should I just get this test? Those are the people we're talking to right now.
Exactly right. Or, hey, I'm wanting to lose, 15, 20 pounds. Should I just get my hormones tested? Or, hey, I'm following a lot of coaches online that specialize in hormonal health, and I'm hearing them talk about Dutch testing and getting their hormones tested. Should I do it just because it seems like that's what they're doing with their clients, or it's what's working for that friend over here? And so definitely, I agree. I think that's really who we're speaking to. And like you said, deep down when there's something off. I mean, to be honest with you, sure, I'll wake up sometimes, or, I just did a big move to a different state with two small children. And I will say, for about 6 to 8 months, things were very, very stressful as we were selling a house, buying a house, and relocating. My stress was high. My sleep was off. My nutrition wasn't as dialed in. My training wasn't as dialed in. And to be honest, I really didn't feel like my best self. And so I could then self-assess and say, okay, I'm under a tremendous amount of stress. I know that I'm not eating well as normal. I know that I have not been training as consistently. My health and fitness goals have really had to be pushed on the back burner. And now I'm focusing in on my life. But this is okay. Like, I know this isn't the best me at the moment, but this is a season, which we all experience
Mm.
them. As soon as things settle back down, I'm going to be able to dial things back in. So like you said, I think that there's that level of like, hey, things are off right now. And, should I hang tight and just clean my diet up and work on all of the other important things? Or should I jump to the testing to see if there is something deeper going on?
Yeah. And so, as we kind of circle back to a couple of things that you said, I wanted to zero in on first, because like I feel like one of the primary things that, we've all heard about is my thyroid, right? Usually that's kind of like the first test that kind of pops up in our head. And I remember that was what, for me, that was my first test. And I was like, there's just something not right here. And I remember I like literally had to like beg my doctor, and she only did it because I was literally like a mosquito about it, um, to do a thyroid test. And at the time, I was just on my journey about all of this stuff. And she only did a TSH test. And for those of you who do not want to spend your podcast Googling, that is thyroid stimulating hormone. And so she only did that test. And so from, the things you work with, the test you work with, does that really give you a good idea of what's going on if there is a hormonal level, or should you really kind of like blow out and get the T3, T4, and the free testosterone? I'm sorry, free thyroid.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say, if you are experiencing a lot of the symptoms that would, equal you having hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, then definitely asking, begging, whatever you need to do to ensure that you're getting the free T4 test, the T3 test, and just definitely taking a look even at reverse T3 and the thyroid antibodies. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do to definitely take a deeper look to see what's going on, especially with your thyroid hormone. Your thyroid is going to have a big impact on your metabolism, and your metabolism is really the powerhouse that is determining how your body utilizes the calories you consume, meaning storing those calories as body fat for later use or utilizing them for energy to help with muscle recovery, organ function, basic movement, all of those things. So if your thyroid is not functioning properly, then you're going to see other really nasty side effects, not just usually weight gain. Most women typically experience hypothyroidism, not hyper. So with hyper, you're typically losing a lot of weight and you have a really high heartbeat, and your resting heart rate is really elevated is what I'm referring to. You're hot all the time. Your body's essentially in overdrive, and with hypo, your body is essentially in underdrive. It's like you just can't get out of the first gear, and you're sensitive to cold, you have dry skin, constipation, fatigue, depression, weight gain, just a sluggish metabolism. Everything is really slow. I would say for sure, if you are exhibiting those symptoms and you have a history of thyroid conditions running through your family, I would definitely say, okay, let's take a deeper look, and they can do the full panel on you. And some doctors don't want to do that, and I agree with you. Sometimes, you can barely get them to even test the basics. I know for me, I had to say, look, this runs in my family. I need to know, like, for sure. So please include this in my testing.
Yeah. No, and yeah, I had to beg. So I like that. So that's one piece, is that, looking at my thyroid and seeing what's going on. Now, again, we talked about, like, there's a number of factors for weight gain. But one of the questions, and especially, you and I deal with a lot of women who are in that, like, premenopausal, perimenopausal, menopausal stage. So, it's this amalgamation of potentially a shitstorm of things.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to hormonal testing, is there, most people think of our main drivers as estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Those are the three that typically come to mind. Does it make sense for me to start to test those when I feel like I'm in that perimenopausal stage to help assess where I am? Or is it kind of really, it's more about symptoms versus hormones? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're trying to say. And I think that you're right. I also help a lot of women that's perimenopausal, menopausal, and there's a lot going on. A lot of different symptoms, and it is at times kind of confusing. What is this? Is this related to, the sex hormones, or is this related to cortisol, or is this related to insulin resistance? Like, there's many different things that you can question with a client. And so I think, the number one thing I would say is, if you are doing all the things, not just by your definition, but you're also investing in an expert, someone guiding you, coaching you, that understands hormones, metabolism, sustainable weight loss, fat loss, and you're still not making progress, or you're working with your coach or nutritionist and they're saying, okay, we've really done all that we can do, and you're still not making progress, I think pausing, and if you haven't done your thyroid function test, you could start there. The next thing you could even do is get your sex hormones tested at your doctor's office. This can be a really great sign if your body's producing enough estrogen or progesterone. And this can also give you a little more insight if you are approaching perimenopause and perimenopause, or even full-blown menopause, which generally speaking, you wouldn't have that period for 12 months, but also you can get some tests that will show that as well. But then there's several other tests you can do to determine really what's going on, like testing your adrenal health, your insulin and your glucose. And then you can even take a deeper look and go into like things like Dutch testing, which are not only going to look at your sex hormones, it's going to look at several other hormones. It's going to impact weight loss, fat loss, energy, sleep, sex drive, all of the other things that also matter as well. And so typically what I do with clients is we get started. If they have any previous testings, we'll usually look over those to kind of see what the previous history was. And then usually not if every single week we're touching base, but I'll definitely say there's several planned, I guess you would call them midpoints or checkpoints, should I say, where we will stop and say, okay, you're 4 weeks in. How are you doing? Let's look at all of the data. Here's what I'm seeing. How are you feeling? We're 8 weeks in. We're 6 weeks in. And it really does vary from client to client, depending on where they are. And I will say if I hit a point with a client where I see that their compliancy is high, they've changed their nutrition, they're not drinking alcohol every single night or at all, they're exercising as I've prescribed, they're doubling down on sleep and steps and hydration and stress management, and things still are not progressing. At that point, that's where I will always say, okay, it's time for us to discuss other options. If you want to start off with your doctor, totally understand. Some of these tests will be covered under insurance, probably, especially with the symptoms you're having. You can talk to your doctor and start there. Some clients don't want to start there because, to be honest, their doctor has poo-pooed on the fact that, they're okay, even though they don't feel okay. I mean, how many times have we been to the doctor and said we don't feel right, but your doctor looks at you and says, you're just fine. Now, I
Right.
want to say there's amazing doctors out there, and I'm so grateful for the medical community and the doctors that truly sacrifice so much time and energy into helping us be our best self and putting the work into their patients. But I do know, speaking from my own experience, there has been doctors I went to when I was dealing with severe adrenal fatigue, totally lost my cycle in my early 20s when I should have been having very consistent cycles. And they looked at me and said, everything is okay with you. Everything was not okay with me. And so some clients are in similar boats and their doctors are saying everything's okay. And so in those situations, you maybe want to explore a more holistic approach, a naturopathic doctor. And that's when you can go on to do things like, Dutch testing or special testing through their companies to see, maybe if there is something that your normal doctor is overlooking.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because I feel that I know I was kind of like you. Like if I could tell my 25-year-old self what I tell my 40-something-year-old self, I would be like, girlfriend, we need a new doctor. because
Right.
because everything you just described, it was like I was not getting my period, or when I did get my period, it was like a murder scene, or I was like doubled over with cramps. That's not normal. Like there was something going on, and if I look back now, had severe hormonal imbalances even in my 20s. And so had I known then what I know now, it would have been, hopefully I would have been in a different place than I was by the time I hit my 40s. Um, so a lot of times, I feel that yes, there are amazing doctors out there, but I feel like a lot of us get nervous to question. You only get like 3.3 minutes with your doctor before they kick you out. So we kind of get nervous about, if they tell us it's in our head, or if they tell you, Ashley, you're just 40. Like, what is, that's what 40 something people do. For us to don't feel intimidated by that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that, we all, like we kind of even said it first, right? Like there's going to be a time when you just know that something isn't exactly right. And, your doctor, like you said, with the symptoms you were experiencing, everything wasn't okay. That wasn't normal for you to go through that. Like my symptoms weren't normal either. And honestly, that just made things worse for me because so many years, I went on
Mm,
thinking that it was in my mind, maybe something was wrong with me. And then the thing that really changed the game for me is when I did a Dutch test. And so, with my background and expertise, this was something I learned about through my training with specializing in hormonal health as it pertains to sustainable weight loss and fat loss. I knew that this was an option, but again, I was relying on my doctor at the time, and Dutch testing wasn't even something they knew about. And so when I did a Dutch test, that's when things really showed up for me. And suddenly, all of the symptoms I was experiencing, the inability to sleep, the loss of my menstrual cycle, the severe cravings for sugar and carbs, losing my hair, being really sensitive to cold temperatures or getting really cold easily, being very sensitive to temperatures in general. When I started to list out all of my symptoms, like I checked all of the boxes. And when I got my test results back, things I can promise you were not normal. But for me, that was really the start of my new beginning and being able to say, okay, I'm going to be able to get control of my health. And it felt great, honestly, because suddenly I'm realizing I'm not just crazy. There is actually something wrong. It's not normal to just not have a period, or for your situation, either not have one or have one that's like so heavy you can barely function.
right. And so, you've talked about this Dutch touch, and it's a relatively new test, compared to all the other tests that are available. But I know that I've done it through my functional doctor. Is this a test that I need to go specifically to a functional doctor? Can I get this through somebody else?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great question. I will say really depends on where you're located and your doctor. Some doctors don't even know what a Dutch test is. I mean, truly, I've been to see certain doctors and told them that I did a Dutch test and that, that's something I've really leaned into and I'm turning to help rebalance my hormones and work through the adrenal fatigue and just the overall hormonal imbalances I was experiencing. And they didn't know what that was. Now, some doctors do, some doctors, took maybe a more holistic approach or are practicing more natural medicine and know what that is. I mean, you can always ask, it's not going to hurt, but I would definitely say, depending on where you are, you can even Google and see what comes up on who offers that test. The beauty with the Dutch test is it's actually a test you're going to do at home in the comfort of your house. You just want to make sure you follow those instructions. And so you don't have to go through a medical doctor. I know
Mm,
there's a lot of, virtual companies like mine and several others. I mean, truly, that offer more in-depth testing, looking at hormones, food sensitivity test, and things like that. And so you do this in the comfort of your home. The test is mailed to you. You go through certain steps on specific days, and then you send that data back in. And then your coach, your doctor, whomever you're going to get the test done, will be able to read that Dutch test for you. And then from there, you can make some lifestyle changes with your nutrition, changes with your supplementation to help you get in a better place. And then you can retest to see how things are improving in the future. But generally, you're going to see some of those symptoms improve as well. So you may not even need a retest. Like, I have many clients that say, I feel so much better now. I feel great. Maybe I'll want to check in again in another year, but for now, I feel really good.
good. And so for those of you who are like, what the hell is this Dutch test? What does the Dutch test actually test?
Yeah, so the Dutch test is a wonderful test. And the thing with the Dutch test is it's really I think it's a wonderful test. It's a dried
Mhm.
urine test, and it is really comprehensive and takes a deeper look into your hormones, your sex hormones, your adrenaline, all things related to your adrenal glands. So cortisol, it's going to take a look at that. It's going to take a look at more oxidative stress markers. There's a lot of different things. So it's actually not just your estrogen and your progesterone. It's going to take a look at cortisol. It's going to take a look at a lot of things, which is really important because honestly, I don't think we should isolate your hormones because they all work together. Not one hormone isn't over here doing one thing and it's not
Right.
impacting everything else. I mean, really our bodies and everything is working together. And so it looks at everything. Now, as far as like getting your thyroid tested, I think going to your doctor and having them do a full panel. And again, if you are really concerned or experience a lot of the symptoms that we talked about earlier, you can, beg or scream or whatever you need to do to say, hey, can you take a deeper look and do a full panel on me? But when it comes to your sex hormones, or, you're worried about your adrenal health, your cortisol, your cortisol, for example, if you feel like you're really struggling with elevated cortisol or low cortisol, which
Mm.
by the way has a lot of symptoms too, that's a really great test to get, and it's going to take a deeper look at a lot of different things. And so I love that test. I do feel like it is very comprehensive and takes a deeper look into all of the hormones, since everything really does work together. I think that test, even in combination with a basic blood panel, including the thyroid, is really beneficial to helping determine what's going on. The one thing I want to add in is that I hadn't mentioned this yet. If you're going to get a full blood panel, I suggest that you do it fasted, just so you can have a
Mm.
really clear idea of what your fasting glucose is, your A1C, and also it's going to definitely impact things like your cholesterol.
Perfect. So before we go there, I want to take a step back about this Dutch test. So you mentioned that it was a dried urine test, and so most of us listening are probably like, "Wait a second, I usually have to go and someone sticks a needle in my arm and they take blood." What is the advantage or disadvantage, if you will, of taking it from my urine versus taking it from my blood?
Yeah, so it's going to be able to give you a better analysis with specifically the way the Dutch test is getting assessed, to take a look at your hormones over a 24-hour period. And so it's a more, in my opinion, everybody has a different opinion on this, a more effective way to
Mm.
really take a look at your hormones. And it's not just that you're, essentially peeing on a piece of paper and mailing it in. You are doing that, but you're doing it at certain times. And that's the thing with the Dutch test, is it's going to tell you what day you need to take it of your cycle, what time period to not have caffeine before. And if this is something that you wanted to do, you would speak with you would speak with a provider or a doctor or your coach
Right,
and go
right.
over all of this. So you're never going to be doing this with the blindfold on. You're going to know what's going on and hopefully ask a lot of great questions, and whomever you're working with is going to tell you exactly how this test works. But for those of you listening in, you take this test on certain days, you take it at specific times,
Mm.
and you actually have to follow those guidelines, otherwise it's not going to be accurate data. And
Yeah.
so that really allows the lab to measure things, in my opinion, in a more effective way than simply going to the doctors and just getting your blood drawn.
Yeah, no, one of the things is when I did the test, other than not having caffeine all day, um, was that
Yeah.
I liked that it took it at different specific points throughout the day, just so that the provider could get a snapshot of how are you in the day, like what are you like when you first wake up in the morning, what happens to you at lunchtime, what happens to you later in the evening, so you kind of can understand, especially when the energy management portion, you can understand why some people might be wired and tired, or why some people just like can't, get the engines firing first thing in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing I want to even highlight with the way you take this test. It's going to show your hormones and how they fluctuate throughout the day, not just a moment in time. And so, for example, if you're dealing with, cortisol issues, and you're worried about high cortisol or low cortisol even, and you're not sure if which one you have, the Dutch test will actually show you how your cortisol is fluctuating throughout the day. And keep in mind, with all of us, we should have higher cortisol at certain times throughout the day, as just like we should have lower cortisol throughout the day. But when you have adrenal fatigue or adrenal dysfunction, your cortisol curve is not normal anymore. It's either too low too high or always too high. And that is also why you're exhibiting very uncomfortable symptoms like not sleeping through the night, feeling wired and tired, gaining inches in your midsection, having irregular cycles, feeling like you're just gonna, any little thing throws you over the edge. You ultimately need a caffeine drip to keep going throughout the day. And also with low cortisol, you will have a lot of the same symptoms. You just can't get up and go. You feel really low energy. It's just really hard to do what you need to do. And so a lot of times, that test is great if you have those symptoms, because it's really going to show how your cortisol curve should look compared to what it actually looks like.
Yeah, no, and I thought that was just, pretty fascinating. Just, the evolution your body goes through as your day chugs along. So now you also talked about, which is another, which is also having another moment, is this whole concept about blood sugar, right? There's so many people talking about blood sugar. And so you talked about, when you do these blood tests, to do it fasted. What is the benefit of doing it fasted versus having some food in your stomach?
Yeah. So when you do your blood test, and specifically the getting your glucose tested, really doing it fasted is key, especially when you're just doing your normal annual blood panel, because you want to really see what is your fasted, glucose levels looking like. You can also take your blood sugar throughout the day. I have a monitor at home. It's not something I use all the time, but there are times when I'm doing my own Dutch testing, or I'm just wanting to see how my body is responding to my nutrition. I will check my glucose to just take a look, and I'll prick my finger, use my test, and sure, it's not going to be the same as the fasting glucose in the mornings. It's going to be higher because typically I just ate a meal, or I just ate a meal either immediately and I'm taking it right after the meal,
Mm,
or maybe I even had a meal an hour or two later. Also, things like caffeine, stress throughout the day, those things can also raise your blood sugar.
yeah. And so then the other thing we talked about, as well as you talked about, was the whole lipid markers. So as far as like cholesterol, triglycerides, all of that, um, you know, is that something that, I know that that's typically something you get in that base level test, but is that something that I should start to monitor, especially as I move into my perimenopausal, menopausal age?
Definitely. I think it's something we should all monitor, even those of us that are, under the age of 40, in our 30s, and, maybe not even perimenopause. You can definitely start monitoring it, taking a look at your HDL, your LDL, and, really the goal is to try and get that good cholesterol as high as possible. And if you're investing in nutrition coaching or working with someone for your workouts, in-person nutrition, whatever it may be for you, definitely paying attention to that. It can be really encouraging as well, because when you are cleaning up your diet, typically you're going to see things like your triglycerides improve. You're going to see your overall cholesterol improve. You're going to see your HDLs improve, your LDLs improve. And that can also be really great to see, because if you're taking action, and I'd say all of the women in your community are, just like the women in my community are, I think it's wonderful to be able to say, wow, like not only do I feel better and am I losing weight or able to maintain my weight or build muscle mass, whatever your goal may be, it's really cool to be able to say, not only am I getting those benefits internally, my health is improving too. So this clean eating, this effort that I'm putting into all of these things are paying off in more than one way.
Yeah. No, I like that. And so, I know we threw a lot of different tests at you, but I think the approach that Ashley has laid out is really comes from a place of start with symptoms first versus shoulds, and then build from there. Start with that base level blood test. Everyone should get a physical at least once a year, just to make sure everything's everything, and then from there build in how do you feel. And there are several different tests. Well, it just popped into my head, so I'm going to go back. Now, one of the tests that I feel that I've been seeing a lot promoted is the Everwell test.
Yeah. No, I haven't really heard as much about that one. I will say with me, I've doubled down on Dutch testing and
Mm,
then at times definitely food sensitivity testing. As you know, many people don't respond well to certain foods and there can be some very debilitating symptoms when you are dealing with a food intolerance or a full-blown allergy. Maybe I've had someone mention it, but I haven't really done a lot of research on that myself.
okay. But for those of you guys listening, there is a company out there called Everwell, and it pretty much, you don't need a doctor to be able to take these tests. And it does do a food sensitivity and several other types of tests. And I'm just, for me, and Ashley's the same way. I just need to do my research just to make sure, is this a company that's going to really give me the true results that I'm looking for, or just, give me what I want to think, give me something I think I want to read.
Right. Actually, when you said that now, I have clients that have came to me saying that they have done programs or worked with companies where they've had testing done. Ultimately, they took a test, they download an app. Maybe this is the same company and all of their results come through and there is a provider, but very distant, not so much like we do with coaching, and offers some suggestions on supplementation and different things that maybe they could do. Not sure if that's the same thing, but yes, there are definitely lots of different options like that. I think, like you said, everybody doing their research and determining really what's best for them. But I would say personally, being able, and maybe this company offers that, but being able to work with a person and have a direct contact and have someone that can really troubleshoot and guide you through is very, very helpful when you're navigating all of this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a type A plus plus personality, and you think you can do it on your own, but here's the thing, right? I know that when I first started on my journey, I was taking a lot of supplements, but at the time I told my provider, I was like, you know what, I don't want to be taking a fistful of pills every day for the rest of my natural born life. And I was very adamant about that. And so that was something we worked through, that, there are certain supplements I'm going to be on for the rest of my life because my body just doesn't create certain things. But there were supplements that I needed just to get me through and heal, and then I could drop them off. And so when you work with someone, they can be more of a guide versus you clicking and scrolling and googling. Plus, I ain't got time for the clicking, scrolling, and googling. I just want someone to help me
Yeah.
cut through the bullshit.
Exactly. And honestly, one of the things I always tell my clients too, because sometimes I'll just have women be totally transparent with me and say, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm following you. I'm following this person. I'm following
Mm,
this coach and this coach.
yeah.
And this person's saying do this and you're saying do that. And she's over here saying something else. And I don't know what to do. And I'm like, that's the problem. You really do. Now, please do your homework, do your work up front, determine who you want to work with, ask great questions, connect with them, all of those things. But I always tell my clients, when you go all in with one approach or one
Mm,
company, it's really important to stick with that. And I
yeah.
say that from a caring and like loving place, and also as a consumer myself in my early 20s when I was investing in experts. I mean, it gets really,
Oh God, yeah.
really confusing. And honestly, you need to be able to trust the process and follow the protocol with whomever you're working with. And it does get really confusing when you are following, let's say, 10 people that essentially all say they do the same thing. And if you're hearing contradicting things, you could get confused. I mean, if you aren't an expert, you may not know, well, what's BS and what's real.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when I was doing fitness competitions, and my coach at the time, she was like, I'm going to tell you this. She's like, you're going to leave here, and some of you are going to listen to what I have to say. And then some of you are going to go home and you're going to Google and you're going to try to follow, a little bit of something I said, a little bit of something, this other person said, a little bit of something that. And she's like, you're not going to get the same results. She's like, it's like getting three different cake mixes and trying to make the same cake. It's never going to come out the way you want it to be. And so it's like you got to find your horse and ride that horse.
Exactly. Right. You can't jump around or, jump on another one as you're going, 50 miles per hour or whatever. Like you do really have to double down. And that's why I think just being confident in your choices and what path you choose to take. I think at times when we are on the other side and we're not feeling our best and we have a lot of symptoms and maybe we're dabbling in different things, it can be really paralyzing and you don't know what to do next because you do feel like you're doing everything right. I will say just really trying to step back and try a different approach, get help and then go all in with whomever you get help with. I think just being able to focus in on that, you're going to do great versus being confused, not sure what
Mm.
to believe, doing what your coach says or your doctor, or, these days, even you have a lot of access to great doctors online. They're sharing things daily on social media, just like all of us. But if you're following 5 of the same experts or doctors, you may get some information that's a little different from all of them. And when you're trying to do everything, nothing's going to work for you.
Oh God. Oh my God. Like mic drop right there. Like there go. Conversation over, do not pass go. If this episode like technology like blew up on us, those are the words I want to be preserved. Like right there.
Yeah, yeah, I know. So that's something I always say to myself and my clients too.
No, I that was just like poo, like absolutely I nailed it right there. Nailed it right there. Um Actually, I have just really enjoyed this conversation. I love that from when on a podcast, I love that when I learn stuff, right? Like I do these for the audience to learn stuff, but I'm like, oh, look at that. I love when I'm able to take down some notes, and I've been taking down some great notes and some great, just advice, just like some advice because like it's really easy for us to just like try to buy our way into fitness versus we got to do the fucking work as much as we don't want to.
Right. That's so true. I mean, it's we all, no one can skip that part. We all have to do the work. And I think we need to normalize that so we can stop beating ourselves up and feeling like things aren't working for us because we're not doing something right when really the struggle is real for everyone. We all have a day one. We all have a day one, and we all have to start somewhere. And the work isn't easy and it's hard for all of us in our own ways. And I think just really normalizing, like, hey, it's okay to struggle. We all do. But guess what? You keep showing up, you keep taking action, and you will get the result you want.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, every single time that someone comes onto the show, I always ask them this question: what is the one thing that makes you feel magical?
The thing that makes me feel magical is just really being able to make an impact
Mm,
to other women all around the world. And to be honest, first and foremost, my daughters. I have a
yeah.
5 and a 7-year-old, both girls, and they watch me. They watch what I do. They copy me, they mimic anything I do, they want to do. And just being able to teach them from a very early age, hey, take care of your body, move your body the right way, nourish your body, don't starve your body. Not one
Mm,
size is perfect. Beautiful is all different sizes and shapes. Don't try and look like mom, look like you. Whatever that's going to be is beautiful. And then helping women realize that, they can really regain their health, and you're never too old. You're never too old to start. You're never too late. You can still live your best life. And that really does light me up.
it's funny because I had just recorded another podcast yesterday, and the woman I was speaking with, she was a fashion editor in like the mid 90s, and we talked a lot about the different sizes and what health was back then and diet culture and so forth. And so I think you know I want to fast forward 20 years from now when your daughters are in their 20s and see what their perception of health is compared to what our perception of health was when we were in our 20s.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be really cool. And just being able to impact and influence them is really cool. And so it's definitely something I think about every single day. And, it's really amazing too when, if you are in your 40s or 50s or beyond that, even, and, your whole life you've been told to diet and starve your body and do cardio all the time and never lift
Right.
weights, that, things have changed, and actually eating enough and lifting weights and not always pushing harder is really a great prescription for success. And so it's really cool to be able to teach that as well.
Yeah. So I just, as I was talking about it yesterday and you talking, I'm like, I just can't wait to see in like, 20 plus years, this, what our daughters are going to think about health and fitness versus what
Yeah,
we were taught about health and fitness. So it'll be a very interesting time.
I agree. A very interesting, and hopefully in a much better, more positive way for sure. But I've
Correct.
enjoyed all of this too. This has been such a fun conversation.
And so, where can people follow you on social or get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm always hanging out on Instagram. My username is Ashley underscore Fillmore and one. So it's Ashley underscore Fillmore one. I'm always hanging out there. I post often there. You can also find me on my podcast, Cheers to Your Success. I talk a lot about metabolism, hormones, exercise. I really just go into all of it with a good dose of mom life and just being totally transparent with where I am in my own journey. So those are the two best places to connect with me.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Again, thank you so much. We have some technical difficulties. We've worked through it, but thank you so much for joining me on the show this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Cool. All right, magic makers, make sure you follow her. She definitely has some great, easy tips. It's not like, here's my 20-step morning routine. She's like, she's got kids. She ain't got time for that. So definitely follow her and enjoy the rest of your day, ladies.